Hello again, thank you for your company. Here's another one of my clocks I thought I'd give a bit of attention to. It sometimes stops, but most of the time it will work if I take the trouble to wind it up. I acquired this clock in payment for some work I did rewiring some guy's boat. He knew I was interested in clocks, and he said, was I interested? So apart from a couple of days work, it didn't cost me much. He wants a bit of a clean. I'm going to leave the movement alone. It was cleaned about 10 years ago, so I might just give it an oil. But I'm going to clean up some of this bright work if I turn it round. It's quite pretty. I'll leave the dial. It's all been lacquered. If you do clean up any brass work, you're wasting your time unless you lacquer it. You can see the difference between that colour and this colour. This has been exposed to the air more because it's got a dome over it. This is a plastic dome. I don't like plastic domes. It did have a glass dome, which you can't beat glass. But I used it on another project, and I found a plastic one that does actually fit this clock. Okay. But it got knocked over and it's broken, and it's got some crap pieces broken out here, which I've just broken out of the back, and I've just glued them together. But plastic, no matter how you clean them up, they attract static, and they never look clear like glass do. Anyway, enough of the moans. So I'm going to remove the movement from the base and give the base at least a clean up. And we'll see how we get on. Incidentally, I didn't say this is the only clock I own that has lantern pinions throughout, which is quite amazing. I've tried to make this type of secondary cog, and I've never had much success. So this is particular interest. The actual value of the clock is not great. It's and of no great age. I suspect Victorian. Anyway, it's older than me. So I suppose it's getting on a bit. Anyway, we'll see how we get on. Okay, this is a close-up. I'll point out a little tip I picked up, don't know where, but most clocks of this period are, and even before actually, are held together by tapered pins. The plates here are held by tapered pins. Even the hands are held on by a very slim tapered pin. To remove these, I've found the best way without doing any damage is to modify a pair of pliers. So here's a pair of pliers, and I've cut a slot in the top. I'll get it in focus. In the top of one. Oh, that shows it better, doesn't it? And then as you nip, I don't want to take these out, but as you nip the this assembly, the actual pin is driven out through the gap in the pliers. You might find that a handy tip if you tend to work on these things. There's absolutely nothing wrong in doing things the easy way. There's no point in doing them the hard way if you've got other choices. So I'm going to use a buffing wheel to clean the brass, which I've mounted in this 2-speed drill. That's an interesting story. A guy down the road had a load of rubbish, and he asked me if I'd take it to the dump for him. He said, I'll give you $5 if you remove that lot. Well, I can see there's some interesting pieces of timber in there. I thought that'll do for the fire. So I happily did that, and it was this drill. Anyway, it worked absolutely fine. So I told the guy that I could find nothing wrong with this drill he threw out. And he said, well, I bought another one now. He says, you might as well have it. I'm not Irish, but the luck of the Irish seems to come into it. Anyway, we'll give this a quick buff up. And that's all you have to do. Well, here I've reassembled. I'm very pleased with the results. Cleaned it up, looks quite good, and it can go back into its home again. I've polished the base with a buffing wheel. I've just finished by hand, and then I've lacquered anywhere that I've removed the old lacquer. Lacquering's quite a specialist thing, and unless you're very good at it, the best thing's to cheat. I did. Use a automotive lacquer spray and just put a light coat over it. The idea is just stop the oxygen from getting to the brass. Okay, we'll move on. Okay then, hands up all those who spotted I put the head on back to front. Oh dear. Anyway, it's only a couple of thumb screws to change. And the lacquer is all nice and dry now, so I'll clean up its plastic dome till I can find a glass one, and that can go back on the shelf. Yet another clock. Here we've got corrosion that's underneath the lacquer. So this is the before shot. Well, this is after it's been fully restored. Quite pleased with it. It's an interesting piece. It's an electric clock. The pendulum length determines the timekeeping, as in all pendulum arrangements, but the pendulum is actually driving the hands, which is opposite to normal. It's quite interesting. What we've got is in the bottom here, at the bottom of the pendulum is a magnet, and we have a small circuit in the base comprising of a small reasonably high gain transistor, one or two components, and as the magnet goes past the central point, there's a small coil there, and it induces a voltage into the coil, switching on the transistor, and the load on the transistor collector increases the push in the coil to the pendulum. That's putting it very basically, but that's how it works. You can actually think of it, if you like, as a linear motor. Anyway, it's something a little bit different, and a couple of days on and off messing around with this. I'm quite pleased with this. I always think brass and glass and mahogany, and this sits on a mahogany table, all go well together. So I'm very pleased with that. Another one resurrected. Well, here we have the electronics in the base of the clock. There's our transistor, a couple of capacitors, and one resistor. And there's our small coil. Nothing very complicated there. So why didn't it go? Well, it's the old story. Someone's left a battery in it, and the end of the battery's gone corroded, and well, if I get in close-ish, that's hardly going to make a connection, is it? So with a bit of luck, I should be able to clean that out, and there's probably nothing wrong with that. And to do that, I'm just going to use a little dentist burr on a sort of a high-speed tool, and just generally get rid of the rust. Oh, it's coming off nicely. Good job that's not my teeth. Well, I'll go a bit further with that, but as you can see now, it's actually shiny. So I'll just check we have got connections through the printed circuit, and I shall use some deoxit on the connections, pop a new battery in, and I'll lay you 10 to 1 the clock will go. Well, it did run, but somewhat intermittently, and the little pickup paw on the top of the pendulum here was missing this drive cog at the top there intermittently, and I noticed the actual pendulum, just pan back a bit, the actual pendulum was had a wobble on it. So I looked at the suspension, and it's just one end is broken on this small suspension here. So whether I broke it or not, I don't know. They say learn to make one before you break one. I think I did that. Anyway, I thought, can I make another one? There's quite a bit of work involved, and most clockmakers would probably have these things, but it's not worth the hassle chasing around. So I had a quick look on the internet. I found a jeweller that did a lot of them. £1.80, postage including. So I took the easy way out there. Anyway, it gives me an opportunity to clean up the glass and the rest of the case. One good reason for getting this one going is I haven't got to wind it. On the previous video I mentioned that my collection of various clocks on the last count was about 48. Well, I don't know if they breed in the dark or something, but it's somewhat increased since then, much to the annoyance of my wife. Why don't you get rid of that old tinny wind-up alarm clock? It's hideous. It's the fact that it was hideous that I wanted it. Anyway, none of them are any value. Most people have given them to me, or rubbish dumps or whatever. This is a little clock. So I can zoom into that. Cheap, modern, made in Germany, electric. I thought I'd have a go at this. This doesn't go. And but it's one of those constructions, I'm sure you've come across it, whatever you've taken apart, that the last screw you take out seems to hold the whole thing together, and it goes into a million bits. So I've chickened out on this one, folks. So I'm going to leave it as a static one. The saving grace there is, of course, it will be right twice a day. Anything that's a bit different. How's that for a bit of a different timepiece? I think I paid 50p for that somewhere. Probably it's all it's worth, but I quite like it. It's a bit different. I've got prostitute clocks, so called, as they display the time on the ceiling. We'll move on quickly. Clocks for the hard of seeing, hearing. No, not hearing, seeing. I beg your pardon, for the blind.
It's 1:54 a.m.
Anything's a little bit different. This is something I picked up in a charity shop. Go back a bit. It's modern, but it's a nice heavy brass clock. Only a few quid, can't remember. It's an early electric, but it's what's happened here, look. There's the old story, someone's left the battery in, and it's all corroded the inside. The door is stoved in, and I hope to see if I can do something with this. This would clean up tremendously. As I say, it's a heavy brass. You can't feel that on the video, but it really is quite nice. But I'm not going to polish this up. There are some circumstances where you actually spoil the thing. The colour is uniform over the whole thing, almost like a sort of patination, so I'm going to leave that. What I'm hoping to do, and I don't know if it's going to be successful or not, I'm going to take it apart and remove the front plate and see if I can get the chapter ring off on the hands. And if I can do that, then I'll clean this up and polish up the back plate and put it back. Anyway, that's the project for today. Whether we'll succeed or not, I don't know. I didn't tell you how many clocks I've really got. Well, this repair went very, very well. I'm very pleased with it. It's turned out a rather interesting little piece actually. It uses a 1.4 volt Mullery battery. I suspect this was a very early electric movement. It mentions ever ready, so the history of ever ready on the internet will give me something of the age. But I'm rather pleased the way it's turned out. A common fault a lot of people make when they restore things, whether it's houses, cars, whatever, is they go over the top and make them into something they never were. There's an expression, gilding the lily. So I think I've done okay there, and that can go back into service. It's another one I've saved.